Welcome to the first part on this course on project management, when we're going to focus now on the introductory aspect to understand the main definitions and the main elements in project management. And especially, as you know, this focus also on research, so I will highlight the key aspects related to research project. Let's start with our first key question. What is a project? So if we look this project like something like this, a container, what do we actually get out of it? So the first question we need to ask is, what is the output of a project? So the output of a project is what we call a product, a result. This is what we get out of a project. We do a series of tasks, series of activities in order to create a product, a result. Now, how we do that, or with what we do that, is with a series of resources. So we need resources, and resources take two shapes. They are either people and or material resources. People to execute the task and material to perform a part element of this creation. Now, all of these are actually input, things we add to our project in order to be able to execute the task. Now, how we define which tasks we need to do? Well, very simple. We first need to define the scope. What are we trying to do? For example, if we look in research, we are talking about what are our hypotheses that we try to prove, that we try to validate. With that information, with that definition, we start to analyze which resources we need, which tasks we need to perform in order to create an output, a product. Now, we do all of this in a time, in a duration. So tasks are executed in a certain amount of time. So that is another important concept in project management. It's not only that we have tasks, it's that those tasks are executed during time. During time, using the resources, which represent actually cost, represents funding that we require in our project. And the objectives, the scope represents the objectives that we try to achieve. It's very important to look and think a little bit about objectives. Objective is something that comes from the stakeholder. There is a funding agency that have a need to understand better how to predict cancer or certain type of cancer. So that will be some of the objectives that we generate, the scope and our hypothesis. And last but not least, we do all of this to create something, to produce a product, and we call this a creation. Now, as I said, these objectives are established or coming from our stakeholder, something we will call in project management our user. So there is a group of people or a person or an organization, an institution that requires something, has an interest for us in order to produce this output. So the product, the end result, is actually for this user. But at the same time, this user is the one that have defined the scope. So this closes the loop. Our stakeholder, our users, will define what they require, and this become our objectives, which we'll define in our scope. And then we apply resources, we define tasks, we produce this product, and this product becomes, or it's delivered to the end user. So it's very important to understand that a project has a start and an end. And the start is when the user defines what he or she, or an institution, what she require in order to focus, and when he or she receives this output. And last but not least, when he or she, we will say, is happy. Happy in the sense that he or she is receiving what was expected to receive. So this is why we need, or this is what is the project. It's actually an effort that we execute in order to generate an output, a product. Now, why do we need projects? Is the next question. Now that we understand what is a project, why do we really need them? Well, we need projects first to solve problems, We want to solve new problems on how to find a new vaccine to cure a particular disease, how to find new biomarkers, how to develop a particular algorithm, how to predict better the weather. So there are different problems that we try to solve. We also want to understand phenomena, how a hurricane form, or a behavior, how a group of people in a social environment act in a particular way. So for example, we can conduct a project with a series of surveys to understand that behavior. And we also want or need to execute projects in order to create new tools. For example, new tools to faster compute an algorithm, to faster predict weather conditions. So it is a combination of all these characteristics that focus on why do we need projects and why projects are indeed actually useful. They help us to solve problems, to understand behavior, or to create new tools. The next question we need to think about is, why do we need to manage all this? Why we need to manage a project itself? Well, the first is to ensure that we produce the output that is expected, that we create a result, a product. There is a reason why a project exists, as I said before, for example, to solve a problem. Now we are interested in to ensure, and this is why we need to manage it, that we produce this output, that the resources we put in place, the tasks we execute, produce what we were expecting to do. But not only that, the main reason to manage is to produce the output, there is also the need to ensure that it's done within the time allocated, the duration allocated, the resources assigned, and the scope of the objectives defined. So the idea or the need to manage it is also to ensure that we stay within scope. So if our project was about understanding why certain cancer is behaving a particular way, that is what we need to focus. This is the scope of the project and not something else. And the resources are assigned to that. So this is key that we manage project. Now let's look a little bit more on the formal definition, looking in some of the important reference in project management, like the Project Management Institute. How is defined what is a project? So a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. The key here to highlight is that it's temporary. It's not something that is recurrent or taking years and years. It's something that we put in place temporarily in order to create something unique, something that doesn't exist. It does not make sense to create a project to produce something that already exists. So remember, projects are temporary and they exist to create something unique. Now, project is what creates value in an organization. So if you want your research yourself to grow, you need projects, because project is what you create new things, and those new things will add value to you. So if your project is successful and you get good papers, those papers will add value to you. You will quickly understand that. Well, it's the same to any kind of organization, not only in research, also in the industry or the government. Project is what make them grow. So if you have no projects, it's very difficult to grow, and you will see how the market, and you see that daily on the streets, is very aggressive into produce new things, new products or services that are the results of a project. Now, the next element we need to understand is that project ends when the objective has been reached. That is key to understand. So our project will be completed when we complete what we define at the beginning of our scope, or otherwise it has to be terminated or canceled because something doesn't work, resources are not performing, or our hypotheses were not correct. For sure, there will be many reasons why a project should be stopped, but it's important for you to understand that there are two main reasons why or when a project finishes is when it's completed based on what we defined originally our objective, or because it needs to be canceled because for whatever reason it's not progressing well and it's better to cancel before consuming all the resources. Now, it's important to make the difference between project, something temporary, for something recurring like fabrication and operation. Those are not projects. So when something already exists, meaning it's not unique, we fabricate it, we produce in mass series. That is not a project, that is pure fabrication. So just to make a clear difference. Now, what is a successful project? Well, a successful project is a project that finished or finalized or is completed at the satisfaction of the customer initially objectives of requirements. So that we'll call as a successful project. And it's also completed within the time frame allocated and the resources, the budget, the funding allocated to it. And last but not least, is indeed accepted by this customer, this end user. He or she of this organization will say, yes, thank you. This is what we want. We are completed. Now, on the contrary, why those projects fail? Well, they fail in some extent because we have a problem to manage the scope. For example, we start changing frequently our hypothesis during the execution. So whatever we have planned, the tasks we want to execute also have to change. The resources we assign also have to change. And not forget that if you, in the middle of the project, you change your whole hypothesis, maybe it's a logical reason, you have already used resources. So your original target is changing. So one of the main reasons why a project fails is because we don't control the scope changes. The issue here is not that you must keep your hypothesis fixed forever and try to live with it and try to get something out of it. No, the point here is you have defined your scope and now you need to manage it. You might need to change it because what you thought at the beginning is not possible, it's not feasible, or it's not simple happening. So you have to change it, but you have to manage those changes. You have to see what is the impact in the time you have, the resources you have, and if you are really going to a better direction. The key to avoid a failure is that you manage it. You should be able to define correctly what is the requirement, what is you trying to achieve. So if you have a very vague definition at the beginning, this is going to lead you to a possible failure. So you need to put a great deal of effort to define what are you trying to achieve. You have lack of a sponsorship. Your principal investigator does not believe on your project. So it's going to be very difficult for you to push it. So you need sponsorship. You need management support on your organization and the funding agencies to push this. Unrealistic schedule. Something that takes a year, you try to do it in 6 months. So that will lead you also to failure. Or lack of resources. You don't have the right resources. You don't have tools in your lab. Or they are not available, or they are not performing, or you need experts and they are busy, or they are not prioritizing to your effort. This is some of the reasons why projects fail, and it's important for you to look into them so when you recognize it, you take actions on it. And we will look at later on in the project in this course, how to see them. Now let's move on to finally understand what is project management. Well, project management is a profession. It's something that you need to learn, you need to practice, you need to build skills in order to perform. And here you have a formal definition from the Project Management Institute that says it's the application of knowledge, skills, and techniques to project activities in order to exceed stakeholder needs and expectations for a given project. So important to highlight here is that you try to exceed the stakeholder needs. You don't only limit yourself to do what it has been asked to do or what you plan to do. You're always trying to do better. The more you put forward to exceed your objective, the more chances you have to have a good output or a high quality output. And it's very important to understand that you require knowledge, techniques, but very important to highlight skills. This is why we said Project management is a profession because we require experience. That is what a skill is all about. That you practice, you suffer it, and because you suffer it, you finally learn and become a good project manager.